do their jobs. Our hearts are broken, and we too grieve with your families. And the city will carry their memories forward, and we will continue to pray for those still recovering and in critical condition. I want to thank the first responders who ran toward the gunfire, all the cops, EMTs, firefighters that got there fast and prevented even more bloodshed. They're heroes, every one of them. That's New York, courage under fire, grace in the face of horror. It's who we are. As we mourn this awful day in New York, we must remember we cannot keep meeting these moments with thoughts and prayers alone. We owe these families more than silence. We owe them action. For now we mourn, but we mourn as New Yorkers together. We'll carry on, yes. That's who we are. But we will never, never be the same. On cost, chaos, corruption. Nearly 8 months into Donald Trump's second term, the American people feel deep buyer's remorse. As you've seen so many times, Donald Trump's big promises turned out to be just duds. Turns out to be more lies. He seems to lie every day. He doesn't even care. He doesn't even shrug his shoulders. He doesn't show a bit of remorse on his face as he spews out lie after lie after lie. Today, only 37% of people approve the job Donald Trump is doing, according to Gallup. Only 37% of Americans believe the country is headed in the right direction, according to a recent YouGov poll. And an overwhelming number of Americans, including independents and conservatives, despise Donald Trump's big, ugly betrayal. These are not the signs of a golden age. This is Trump malaise, created by three things: higher costs, endless chaos, rampant corruption. Let's talk about cost, the number one thing on Americans' minds. Donald Trump's tariffs have been a national sales tax on the American people. Yale Budget Lab estimated this week that the totality of Donald Trump's tariffs will cost $2,400 this year. $2,400. That's a lot of money. The cost of health care is going to skyrocket. Thanks to the big, ugly bill, as many as 15 million Americans are going to lose their coverage. And even if you don't lose your coverage outright, you're still in great, great danger of paying far more out of pocket, hundreds of dollars more, sometimes even thousands, for health care insurance. And that's because Republicans failed to extend the ACA's premium tax credits, which expire at the end of the year. 24 million Americans will soon get a letter in the mail telling them that their premiums are going to go up in 2026. This letter ain't coming 2 years from now, as they tried, the Republicans, to kick the can down the road and hide this from people. It's coming right now, folks. You're going to get those letters, those increases in the mail. And remember, it's because of Donald Trump and the Republican senators' lack of courage to stand up for you as they bow down to millionaires. If Republicans don't work with Democrats to restore these tax credits, premiums are going to go up by 75%. 5 million Americans will lose their coverage altogether. Let me say that again. If Republicans don't work with Democrats to restore these tax credits, premiums are set to go up by 75%, and 5 million Americans will lose coverage altogether. That is precisely what Donald Trump did to help the billionaire class and the corporate special interests, hurting very grievously American families, so many of them. On chaos. Now, as costs go up for the American people, so does the chaos. It's unending, it's exhausting, it's dangerous. Donald Trump's trade war, total chaos. 1 minute he says yes to tariffs, the next he says yo, after that no, and after that he changes his mind again. And the American people are going to pay a lot more because of these tariffs. What about DOGE? Again, unmitigated chaos and a failure at achieving any real efficiency. DOGE has fired, rehired, and fired everyone from VA workers to medical researchers to U.S. aid workers to even nuclear safety personnel. Incredible. The Social Security Administration is being hollowed out in real time. They don't like Social Security, these right-wing Doge people. It's a government program, even though it's the most successful government program we've ever had. So they're afraid to just shoot it through the heart. So instead they strangle it. Fewer people answering the phones, fewer people solving the problems when you can't get your check, putting barriers in the way of people applying. They've sent 7,000 staffers packing. Wait times on the phones have gone way up, online services have gone dark, millions of seniors who depend on Social Security have been left anxious and betrayed in the dark. And you can be sure, when that chaos occurs, they'll somehow figure out a way to blame someone else. But they're to blame, they did it. And finally, as this all happens, as Americans pay out of pocket, as chaos keeps Americans distracted day after day after day, what's happening here in Washington with all this cost increase happening, with all this chaos? In addition, unfortunately, it's unprecedented corruption. Never in our lifetimes have we seen a president use the levers of power so transparently to personally enrich himself and his inner circle. That never happened in America. Presidents, Democrats, Republicans, independents, conservatives, liberals, they respected the fact that their office, being in high office, was a guardianship, not to grab and reach and make money and enrich themselves. But that's what Trump is doing regularly. In the past few months, Donald Trump accepted a luxury plane from Qatar to use as Air Force One, and we have no clue as how many hundreds of millions or more in taxpayer dollars will be spent in renovations. You have to renovate it because there could be listening devices and even little nails and screws in those planes. So you've got to almost take it apart and put it back together. So Donald Trump can have this plane. And the way the deal works, after he leaves office, it goes to his presidential library. Can you imagine a gift like that to a sitting president from a country we have to deal with and gutter, where we've had good and bad relations with all the time? And then that's not all. He turned the south lawn of the White House into a Tesla dealership when he was friendly with Musk. His family is getting rich off crypto schemes, selling access to the White House for profit, personal profit. Truly, the Trump administration is rampant self-dealing at an unprecedented scale. And that turns the stomachs of Americans who believe we're better than that. And there are many millions of us who believe that we are better than what Donald Trump is doing. And then we have Jeffrey Epstein. The more time passes, the less we all know about the truth behind Trump's relationship with the late billionaire predator. Donald Trump promised he would release the Epstein files while he was on the campaign trail. He made that promise. He has yet to do it. Speaker Johnson quite literally preferred to shut Congress down and send everyone home on an Epstein recess rather than risking a vote on the Epstein files to take place. Americans are right to be angry over the lack of transparency. But this isn't just about getting the truth. This is also every bit about our national security. Whatever may be in the Epstein files is clearly troubling enough that Donald Trump doesn't want to touch this issue with a 10-foot pole. So it's natural to ask, what happens if America's adversaries use cyber attacks or other means to access investigative material into Jeffrey Epstein that are embarrassing or worse for the president and or the people around him? What happens if Epstein materials end up in the hands of the Chinese government or Russia or North Korea? Unless the Epstein files are released and made fully transparent to the public, could our adversaries use that information to blackmail someone like the president or other senior leaders in government? What kind of risk could that pose to our national security? So today I'm calling on the FBI to immediately conduct a counterintelligence threat assessment to ensure we understand the risk posed if a foreign adversary were to gain access to anything connected to the Epstein files. Specifically, I'm calling on the FBI to do three things. First, we must determine if foreign intelligence agencies could gain access to the information the President does not want to release in the Epstein files through methods that include cyber intrusion. Second, the FBI must identify any vulnerabilities that could be exploited by foreign intelligence agencies with access to non-public information in the Epstein files, including being able to gain leverage over Donald Trump, his family, or other senior government officials. And third, I'm calling on the FBI to publicly show they're developing mitigation strategies to counter these threats and safeguard our national security. The idea of foreign adversaries hacking into agency files to collect information that could be leveraged against our government is not at all a remote possibility. Just last Thursday, it was reported that DHS and HHS were among several government agencies hacked as part of a breach to Microsoft's SharePoint service. This hack, Microsoft confirmed, was carried out by Chinese actors. Hacks like this could very well be an attempt to exploit federal systems to get access to Epstein files and potentially use it to influence those named in the files. Whatever is in the Epstein files is concerning enough that Donald Trump's running scared. If that is in fact the case, our adversaries could certainly be interested in trying to use this information to hurt America and Americans. We must ensure that that can never happen. The FBI must, and that the FBI must immediately conduct a risk assessment so we're not caught flat-footed if our adversaries have already seen these files. National security, Mr. President, should never be a partisan issue. We need to do everything we can to make sure we're protecting the U.S. and American families every single day. This report is imperative to do just that. And there is one more thing Donald Trump could do to quell people's anger, confusion, frustration, and fears over the national security ramifications. Stop running away from this issue, tell the truth, and if there's clearly no national security risk, release the Epstein files. President Trump. I yield the floor.
At least 4 vote series are planned here in the Senate today on 4 different nominations, including the nominees for Defense Department General Counsel, Commerce Undersecretary for International Trade, CDC Director, and the Veterans Department Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. CDC Director nominee Susan Menares is the key nomination we're watching today. That first vote series expected about 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Right now, we're waiting for a senator to speak.
We welcome Betsy McCoy to the program. She served as the former New York Lieutenant Governor in the state and also now is the founder and chair of the Committee.
Soon the Senate will vote on President Trump's nomination of Emil Bove to a New Jersey seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. The swirl of information concerning the Department of Justice this year is almost impossible to follow. As ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, we try to follow closely not only the nominees for judicial positions and positions of leadership at the Department of Justice, but also those issues that are relevant to our jurisdiction. Surprisingly, a case that has been around for years, the Jeffrey Epstein case, has captured the attention not only of Washington, but many people in this country. I've never seen anything like it. The House of Representatives went into a roll call vote that lasted for 8 hours. 8 hours. The roll call was open. I'm sure it set a new record. What hung them up so dramatically? The Jeffrey Epstein case and whether the files would be released. As a result of that, the Speaker of the House decided that he would give a special recess to the House of Representatives and basically tell them, leave Washington. We're not going to vote on the Epstein question. What is it in these files that is so frightening to the President, the White House, Department of Justice, and the Republican leadership in Congress? The American people have had their doubts for a long time that we knew all that we needed to know about this case. But now they've been confirmed by the actions of the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States. I will just say flat out for the record, I know of no information that implicates the President in wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein, period. But I do believe, as many Republicans believe, the best thing to do for all of us is to disclose to the American people the truth of the situation. What actually happened with Mr. Epstein? Did he commit suicide? Questions that are still unanswered. And then last week, something happened that was completely unheard of. One of the leaders in the Department of Justice asked for a private, personal meeting with a woman who was convicted for her activity with Jeffrey Epstein. Her name is Ghislaine Maxwell, and she is serving a 20-year term in prison, in federal prison, for her wrongdoing. She was involved in the trafficking of children, young women, for Mr. Epstein and his friends, and she lied about it. According to the prosecution, brazen lies. The penalty she faced, 20 years in prison. That is a hefty penalty. It indicates some serious wrongdoing. The Trump administration sent a higher-up official to meet with her privately in the prison and to ask her questions. We don't know the nature of those inquiries, but it's certainly unusual for someone serving a 20-year sentence to have that kind of a visitor. We don't know what was said, but we should. I joined with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat of Rhode Island, in sending a letter to the Department of Justice. We want a copy of the transcript of that conversation between the Department of Justice officials and Ms. Maxwell, who's serving these 20 years in prison. We want to know what was said. I think we have a right to. If there's some aspect of it that relates to redacting or perhaps relates to national security, I'll be sensitive to that, as I'm sure everyone would want me to be. But if it's a question of what kind of a strategy was behind meeting with this woman, Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend at one time, now serving a 20-year prison sentence, I think the American people have the right to know. And secondly, let me make it clear, for her wrongdoing, she's being penalized dramatically and should be. Any notion that she's going to receive a pardon from Donald Trump, which seems to be a rather common thing in his administration, is totally unacceptable, totally. She was branded as a brazen liar when she was sentenced. Now that she's out, she has a chance to reduce the sentence or eliminate it by making statements. Her credibility is zero. Any notion of a pardon or any notion of clemency by this president is totally inappropriate. Let's go back to the nomination of Emil Bove to a New Jersey seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. An unusual thing occurred with this. He came and answered a questionnaire, as he should, for the White House as well as for the Judiciary Committee, and then appeared before us under oath and answered questions. But what was unusual about this situation is that many questions that he tried to answer, he didn't get close to coming to the truth. So egregious were his statements that individuals who worked with him were willing to risk their career in public service to come forward as whistleblowers to members of the committee in Congress to tell them that Mr. Bove had misrepresented the facts before us. They risked their public careers to come and tell us this information. And as a result of it, some of them are going to have to leave the Department of Justice. But it seems that when given a test of values and ethics, time and again, Mr. Bove fails, and those around him step forward and risk their own careers to tell the truth. So we said, as Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee, to the chairman, we believe these whistleblowers are credible. They're telling us things about Mr. Bove that contradict his testimony before the committee, and we believe that they should be heard. They are willing to come before the committee and take an oath to tell the truth and run the risk of a retribution or penalty if they are found to have misled the committee and misrepresented the facts. You can't ask for more than that. Someone willing to risk their job to tell the truth and then to appear before our committee under oath and testify as to what happened. I think that's credible, and I don't think it's avoidable. We're talking about Bove being appointed to a federal circuit bench that is a lifetime appointment. This is a critical decision, and we need to have the facts before the American people. So what was the response of the Republican on the committee, the chairman? They turned us down. They don't want to hear any whistleblowers. They don't want to hear people who are willing to stand before us under oath and tell us what actually happened with Mr. Bove and his misrepresentations to the committee. As members of the conservative legal establishment have noted, Mr. Bove's nomination represents an alarming departure from the type of nominees we considered under the first Trump administration. Like under other individuals President Trump has installed in the highest positions of our government during his second term, Mr. Bove's primary qualification appears to be his blind loyalty to this president. As acting Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Bove personally ordered the terminations of dozens of career federal prosecutors who worked to put violent January 6 offenders behind bars. Remember what happened January 6th? Vice President Pence was sitting in the president's chair. We were counting the ballots for the Electoral College to determine who won the presidential election, and we had to stop. The Capitol Police came in, took the vice president off the podium, and then notified us that there was a demonstration taking place in the Capitol building that was dangerous. I remember the first thing they said to us, stay in your seats. This is going to be a safe room. You can stay here. 10 minutes later, the same policeman came up and said, we're wrong. It isn't safe. Leave as quickly as possible. We filed out that exit door. All the members of the Senate, the vice president was gone. These demonstrators swarmed through the Capitol, attacked the Capitol Police, who were there trying to defend the building and the people in it, causing 140 of them to be injured, and 5 of them lost their lives as a result of this. And then they went on and started doing their job of ransacking this chamber and the offices of the senators in this building. They did great damage to this building, millions of dollars. And even worse, in my estimation, they desecrated what I consider to be a cathedral to democracy, the United States Capitol building. Many of them, of course, when they were aping for the cameras, were creating videotaped evidence that was used against them. The Department of Justice went into an investigation of these demonstrators who had ransacked the Capitol and threatened the lives of people who were here. And as a result of it, more than 1,500 were prosecuted for that wrongdoing. It took a long period of time, a lot of investigation. U.S. attorneys were asked all over the United States to participate in this. What happened? The 1,500, many of them ended up with criminal sentences, some very serious sentences, and some were incarcerated. Then came Donald Trump and gave a full unconditional pardon to the January 6 rioters who came into this building. Full and unconditional. Then to make it even worse, his new administration in the Department of Justice came in and said, if you were an assistant U.S. attorney following orders to prosecute these individuals and these rioters, you can be fired for doing it. We want you to disclose whether you participated in the investigation and prosecution of these individuals. Who was behind all this? Well, quite a few members of the Trump administration. But as acting Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bove, the man who's seeking this judgeship, personally ordered the termination of dozens of career federal prosecutors who worked to put violent January 6 offenders behind bars. Mr. Bove even made the outrageous claim that the prosecutions of January 6 rioters were, quote, a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people. Imagine that. He doubled down on the sentiment during his confirmation process, and further insulted the law enforcement officers who kept us safe and risked their lives from these rioters. In response to a question before our committee, Mr. Bove wrote, and I quote, "Heavy-handed tactics by January 6 prosecutors were, quote, equally unacceptable as rioters' attacks on the police." Think about that for a moment. He's saying the assistant U.S. attorneys, the prosecutors who went after the individuals who stormed through the Capitol were just as bad as the rioters themselves. I pointed this out to my Republican colleagues, that a man seeking a lifetime appointment to the federal bench believes that those who prosecute cop beaters are as bad as the cop beaters themselves. Expecting my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to react as I have this morning, what did I get? Crickets, silence, no response. He said the prosecutors were as bad as the rioters themselves. And Mr. Bove has been up to a far more as senior Justice Department official than just excusing the conduct of January 6th offenders. He personally led the administration's attempt to strike a corrupt bargain with New York City Mayor Eric Adams by offering to drop his pending prosecution in exchange for Mayor Adams' cooperation on President Trump's immigration policies. Get that straight. Investigations of corruption on the mayor of New York City, the response from the Trump administration from Mr. Amel Bove was, "We'll cut a deal with you. We won't prosecute you if you promise to play ball with us when it comes to mass deportations." In response to Mr. Bove's alleged quid pro quo, several federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, including the U.S. Attorney herself, a staunch conservative who clerked for Justice Scalia and was appointed to the position by President Trump, made it clear that they would not participate in Amel Bove's deal with the mayor of New York. Mr. Bove's disdain for the rule of law has been a theme throughout his entire career. As a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, he once admitted that prosecutors he supervised told the defense team, quote, "flat lie regarding their disclosure obligations." Flat out lie. Given that background, it appears that Mr. Bove's time in the Trump administration has been true to form. Last month, Erez Ravini, a career DOJ attorney who defended the first Trump administration's administrative policies in court, filed a whistleblower complaint with my office. According to Mr. Ravini, Mr. Bove told other department attorneys that they might need to say, quote, "F you," close quote, to federal courts that issued orders which the Trump administration had disagreed with. Remarkably, when he was under oath before the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Bove would not deny that he had delivered such a message. He merely said he did not recall whether he had used the epithet that I characterized, the explicit language. So I asked Mr. Ravini, the whistleblower, to substantiate his claims, and he did. Mr. Ravini provided text messages, emails, and a trove of other documents corroborating his claim that Mr. Bove had both suggested the possibility of violating court orders and had spearheaded efforts to mislead judges. And Mr. Ravini is willing to testify under oath about what I've just said. I asked the Judiciary Committee in a formal letter to take his testimony, but apparently my Republican colleagues have no interest in even learning the truth about Mr. Bove. Mr. Ravini is apparently not alone. According to public reporting, another whistleblower filed a complaint with Justice Department's Inspector General that further backs up his allegations. My office is working to obtain a copy of that complaint filed with the Inspector General. The contents of that complaint are one of many unanswered questions regarding Bove's conduct. It appears my Republican colleagues fear the answers. That is the only reason I can see for their insistence on forcing this nomination through at breakneck speed before all the facts are public. In addition to the outstanding Inspector General complaint, we have absolutely no idea how involved Mr. Bove has been in the Trump administration's Jeffrey Epstein cover-up. As I've noted previously, it was very convenient for Senate Republicans that Attorney General Bondi did not announce her plan to keep the Epstein files hidden until shortly after Mr. Bove's obligation to answer questions before the committee. Interesting timing. Mr. Bove has served as the most senior level of the Justice Department in these early months of the administration. It's highly unlikely that he does not have knowledge of the Epstein cover-up. So my colleagues and I sent him a follow-up question to assess his involvement. No surprise, he refused to answer. Some conservative voices have been willing to speak truth to power regarding Mr. Bove's nomination. The editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, no liberal newspaper, pointed out that Mr. Bove's record, quote, creates an impression of a lawyer comfortably pursuing policy outcomes by pushing legal boundaries. And conservative legal commentator Ed Whalen wrote that he has, quote, serious doubts that Bove has the character and integrity to be worth confirmation as a federal judge. You don't have to take it from them or me. President Trump himself has made it clear that Mr. Bove was selected for his position not because of his legal accomplishments or his dedication to the conservative method of constitutional interpretation. As the president put it, Mr. Bove will, quote, do anything that is necessary to make America great again, end of quote. I strongly urge my colleagues to consider the implications of giving this man, Emo Bove, a lifetime seat on the federal bench. Join me in opposing his nomination. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Idaho.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to complete my remarks before the 11:30 vote.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I rise today to urge my colleagues to vote in favor of the motion to invoke cloture on Mr. William Kemet, who is nominated to serve as the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade. In this role, Mr. Kemet would lead the Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. This agency promotes U.S. exports, attracts foreign investment, and counters unfair trade. Mr. Kemet is well qualified to lead the International Trade Administration. In addition to his private sector experience, Mr. Kemet served at the Office of the United States Trade Representative during President Trump's first term. As a counselor to the U.S. Trade Representative, he advised on important trade policy and legal matters, including the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. At his nomination hearing, Mr. Kemet said he understands how trade policy affects real workers, real businesses, and the long-term competitiveness of the United States. He pledged to bring this perspective to every aspect of his job, and I'm confident that he will do so. I thank Mr. Kemet for his commitment and for his responsiveness throughout the nomination process. I strongly encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join me today in voting to advance Mr. Kemet's nomination. I yield the floor. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum calls with respect to the Kemet and Monarez nominations.
Without objection. Under the previous order, the question occurs on the nomination. Is there a first and second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo.
And the first vote of the day on the confirmation of Earl Matthews to be General Counsel at the Department of Defense. President Trump nominated him in February, and Earl Matthews served as acting General Counsel of the Army and was Deputy Assistant to President Trump during Trump's first term in office. Up next, to vote on whether to advance the nomination of William Kimmett to be Commerce Undersecretary for International Trade. We expect 3 more vote series in the Senate today after this one.
Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody coming out on a hot summer afternoon. This has been a project, by the way, the great governor, is it the state or the Commonwealth of Virginia? Okay. So the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, is here. So appreciate so much your participating in this. So I'm going to give a kind of brief overview of the project, and then we'll hear from the governor, who knows a lot about why some states grow and others don't. And then we will be taking some questions from you. So this is a project that has been about 2.5 years in the making. We had this idea. Look, let me put it very simply. I believe the single most important thing that is going on in this country economically and demographically is the massive shift in migration that's happened over the last 10 to 20 years. It is accelerating. It is not decelerating. And the quick picture here is that you're seeing a big migration of people out of the old Northeast, which once was the dominant region. For 20 years, Governor, the Northeast was the power center of America. And you think of New York and Philadelphia and Baltimore and New Jersey, and that area was the kind of apex of American economic and financial power. That is no longer the case. Just 2 years ago, for the first time in history, the Southeast is now the dominant region of the country in terms of production, and that includes obviously Florida, Texas, Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas. In fact, what's really interesting about this study that we've done is the states that used to be considered the backwater states, like Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, are growing, and states like New York and Massachusetts are losing population to Arkansas and Alabama. That tells you a lot about how bad those policies are in those states. So I thought I'd just very quickly show you a demonstration of the project. We did this. We want this to be available for demographers, for students, for people who are trying to understand economic policy. And we made it as user-friendly as we possibly can. So, Jackie, if you can put the first slide up that shows what is going on with respect to this. So the website is called votewithyourfeet.net, and so it is available to anybody. It's obviously free. We've made it as user-friendly as possible. And let's start with what is going on with respect to these population movements. And this is pretty amazing. You can see that the states that have grown the most in population over the last 10 years, and these are gigantic. These are net numbers, by the way. These are the numbers of people who've moved into the state minus the number of people who've moved out of the state. And you can see the big winner in this sweepstakes has been Florida, which has gained almost 2 million people on net. That's gigantic. That's four to five congressional seats right there. And then you can see Texas. There's a real competition between Florida and Texas to see which state can outdo each other. It used to be Texas, but about 3 or 4 years ago, Florida overtook Texas as the #1 state of migration. And then you look at some of these other states. I mean, look at what's going on here. You see North Carolina, you see Arizona, South Carolina, Tennessee. You notice anything the same about all these states, Governor? They're all states in the southeast region of the country. Washington State is one of the kind of outliers, but Washington State is a state that has no income tax, so it's not surprising they're gaining population. So these are enormous numbers of people that have mostly moved. Well, let's show next the states that people are. By the way, these are the official Census Bureau data. We're not making this data up. We took it straight from the census. And you can see that the losers here are pretty remarkable. California and New York have been the biggest losers. And incidentally, you could understand maybe why people would want to move out of New York. The weather isn't always so great. It's a northeastern state. It's cold there in the winter. But how do you screw up California, Governor? I mean, really, that is a slice of heaven. It has the most beautiful mountains, beautiful people, beautiful oceans. And this is the first time, Governor, in history, the history of our country, that California is now losing people to others. It used to be a place that people wanted to go to. And this is a good demonstration of what happens when you put in place years and years and decades of bad policies. Incidentally, the two states in the country that have the highest income tax, guess which? California and New York. And then you see my home state of Illinois, which has just been ruined by progressive policies. What's happened to Chicago has been really devastating, and you can see some of these other states, Massachusetts, et cetera. So what you get, you're starting to get the picture here, right, that people are moving out of the Northeast, they're moving to the dynamic states of the South. I want to just interject one other quick thing. When you look at states as a percentage of their population, because Florida and Texas are already big states, but the states that, of the mountain states, states like Utah, Montana, Idaho, are growing very rapidly as well. In terms of percentage terms, they're actually growing just as fast as Florida and Texas are. So what you're seeing is the coasts are not doing so well, California and the Northeast, and these states in the mountain region of the country and the Southeast are doing really well. The next one I'll show you, can you show the next chart? Thank you very much. Is now the second part of this study that I think is maybe even more interesting than the population numbers, Governor, is we now have IRS data that tracks where people, we don't know who they are, but we know what their incomes are on their tax returns. So we have a pretty good indication of where the money is flowing into. And this is really pretty amazing. So once again, look at, by the way, Florida, almost $200 billion over the last 10 years of net income has flowed into that state. That's an incredible number. It's one of the reasons Florida is such a prosperous state right now. We're trying to buy a home in Florida right now. We can't afford it. I mean, it is okay, right. Great idea, Governor. And so Florida is the big sweepstakes winner here. Texas is obviously doing well. I was surprised that Texas is gaining about as many people, but basically what this is telling you is that people with wealth are moving to Florida. And then you can see Arizona, North Carolina, South Carolina, et cetera. Before I forget, because this is a really important point, it's the reason we asked Governor Youngkin to come, is Virginia is an example of a state that got it wrong for the last 10 years. Your predecessors did not do a very good job of attracting people. It was high taxes, too much regulation, too much crime, all of those things. And you have turned that around, Governor, and our studies indicate, and the Census Bureau confirmed this, that last year, for the first time in a decade, Virginia is now a state people are moving into. So congratulations for that. That's an amazing feat. You've made a huge difference. Show the next one. So those are the states that have gained, and then this is the sad story. Same thing. New York and California and Illinois are just being bled to death. And the way I put it, Governor, is that these states need to change or die. They need to change or die because this migration will continue. Some of our friends on the left and some of our Democratic friends like to say, well, taxes don't matter that much. They don't really have an impact. You're looking at the impact of taxes right here. I mean, this is, and incidentally, I've debated some of my liberal friends for 25 or 30 years. And the one thing they cannot explain is why it is, if their progressive policies work so well, people are voting with their feet against it. And they really have no response for that other than air conditioning. And by the way, air conditioning is a factor behind the rise of the Southeast, but it is not the whole explanation. So that just shows you the states that are growing. Finally, I don't know if we can put this on the screen. Can we do this, Jackie, and show just a quick demonstration of how the website works? Okay, so this is something that Jackie did yeoman's work in putting together. And you can see what's kind of fun about this is you can look, you can click on a state, and then you can click on a second state, and it'll show you how many people are moving from one state to another. So let's start with, Jackie, let's do how many people have moved over the last 10 years from California to Texas. So you can see that's a big number. That's a huge, huge number. Now, and by the way, you can see the moving van, and you can also do it with respect to the money that's changed. Can you do well, before you do that, let's do the other one I want to show you. And by the way, as we get in the Q&A, if you have questions about certain states, we're happy to do the demonstration. Let's do New York and Virginia. Let's see, let's see how that turned out. So that's a New York to Virginia. What is that number? That is a big number of people who moved out. So you're the beneficiary, Governor, of the bad policies in New York. So I want to turn it over to Governor Youngkin, who has been a superstar. I met the governor when he first started running for governor. I said, "You crazy? You're going to give up this great life that you have to run for governor." Ran a spectacular campaign and has been one of America's great governors over the last 4 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia.
I'll leave that one up there just for a minute. I have two. So first of all, thank you. While this is up here, I just want to point out two things. The data ended in 2022, which is and it's 2021 tax data. And so this is the year that I came in. And I will tell you, I think there are two states on here because they have different governors that are changing. And I will tell you, Virginia, I know, is changing. And on the other slide, where the other one was, Louisiana. And Louisiana is fundamentally changing. And it's interesting to watch what will happen in Louisiana as well, as they have common sense policy.
Well, good morning. Today is an auspicious day for aviation safety. A day marked, I hope, by a revived spirit of hope and a shared determination to act in the face of an unforgettable tragedy. American skies must be as safe as possible, and our duty as lawmakers is to ensure that they are. I would like to start by thanking the individuals who are joining me for the introduction of the Rotorcraft Operations Transparency and Oversight Reform, or the Rotor Act. Secretary Duffy, Chairwoman Homendy, Tim and Sherry Lilly, Doug Lane, and my colleagues have all worked hard to make the American skies safer. Tim, Sherry, Doug, thank you for your courage and your advocacy. Your presence reminds us of what is at stake. You've turned your grief into purpose. We are here today because of your efforts and the memory of Tim and Sherry, your son Doug, your wife and son, and all of the loved ones who were lost over the Potomac. The Rotor Act represents a common sense step forward in aviation safety reform. One of the most important parts of this bill is the requirement that all aircraft, military and civilian, use both ADS-B out and ADS-B in. ADS-B is critical for aviation safety. This technology allows aircraft to broadcast their positions and to receive positions of others in real time, faster than other technology in use today. It gives pilots and air traffic control a clear view of what is happening in the skies. The NTSB first recommended ADS-B in nearly 20 years ago. We are going to make that happen this year. Make no mistake, there cannot be a double standard in aviation safety. We should not tolerate special exceptions for military training flights operating in congested airspace. No matter the circumstances, any aircraft flying near commercial traffic must fully adhere to safety standards. Given the communications breakdown that led to the accident, it is also important to address helicopter routes in congested commercial airspace. We cannot have commercial airplanes and helicopters on a collision course ever again. This bill is based on two core principles: technological transparency and institutional responsibility. While American skies are among the safest globally, this safety is not always assured. I want to be clear. The Senate will lead this effort. We will not wait for another accident to happen before we act decisively to protect the American skies. We have made it abundantly clear that when American lives are at risk, excuses are not acceptable. However, this is about more than policy. It's about people. The families standing here, they didn't ask to be a part of this story. However, they stand with the courage to ensure that it has a better ending for others. This is the kind of legacy we should all aspire to build. Thank you, and I now recognize the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, to give his remarks. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Senator. And first I want to thank you and your Senate colleagues for taking a bold step. There's a few tweaks we may want to make with you and give you some feedback and insight, but by and large, this is the right approach. And we're here today because of the tragedy in January at DCA, and that should not be the story. Focus on safety should have always been the focus. And I think in the past, people became complacent, leaders became complacent, and we had warnings of near misses in the DCA airspace, unacceptable. And so I think at this moment, by the way, because of the great partnership of the families, and I couldn't ask for better partners, constructive, insightful, helpful, paying this forward to make sure no other family goes through what they went through is just been a godsend to make our skies safer, and I thank you all for your effort. But this is the right step. This is the right approach. And by the way, Senator Cruz is a Republican. This is not partisan. Safety is not partisan. It is Democrats and Republicans, House, Senate, DOT, FAA, the President's administration. All of us want to make sure we're safe. And so, Senator, I commend you for this bold effort and rallying the forces in this body to make sure we lead and make sure our skies continue to be the safest in the world. And this is one giant leap that's going to help make that happen. And I look forward to working with you and your colleagues to advance this cause. So thank you for driving. Again, 22 years ago, the NTSB recommended this. By the way, sometimes people get concerned about cost. And I don't think we should be concerned about cost when it comes to safety. But I was talking to the administrator of the FAA. The cost to deploy this technology is not that great for commercial aircraft or for the military. We can drive safety way higher and also at a very affordable cost. That's the benefit of the advancement of technology over the course of the last 22 years. And so this is doable, and I think the American people expect this from this body, this administration, to keep them safe. And so with that, thank you for having me, and look forward to working with you, Senator.
Thank you very much. I now turn to Doug Lane, whose wife, Christine, and 16-year-old son, Spencer, were killed in the accident. He is also here representing the other families of Flight 5342.
Thank you, Chairman. And I also just wanted to acknowledge Ben Stuhl, who's also here with me from the family group. He lost his partner, Melissa McAndry, on the flight. First off, we want to extend our sincere appreciation to Chairman Cruz, his co-sponsors, Senators Moran, Marshall, Schmidt, Blackburn, Budd, and Sheehy, for introducing the Rotor Act, a significant effort aimed at strengthening aviation safety and oversight. Chairman Cruz has been one of our most consistent and strongest voices for the families of Flight 5342 and for overall aviation safety reform. The Rotor Act reflects many of the priorities our families have been advocating for since the tragic loss of Flight 5342 6 months ago today. We're especially encouraged by the stronger NTSB requirements in the bill, as well as the requirement for an Army Inspector General to conduct an audit into the Army's role in our accident. These measures are essential steps towards ensuring that the failures which led to this tragedy are never repeated. While we know this bill represents an important starting point, we also know it will take bipartisan momentum to ensure aviation safety. We are eager to see what Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Kent will achieve on the Senate floor to build on this foundation to build the strongest possible protections for all who fly. This is not about politics for us, it's about saving lives. Every meaningful step towards transparency, accountability, and safer skies is a victory for every family who has suffered an unimaginable loss. Please be sure to follow along as we continue our advocacy efforts at flight5342.org. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today.
Well, thank you, Doug, and thank you for your strength and courage to stand up and fight in the face of truly horrific loss. I now turn to Tim and Sherry Lilly, the parents of Sam Lilly, the first officer of Flight 5342, for their words. Tim and Sherry.
Today marks 6 months from the most tragic event in our family's history. What we're doing here today is we're going to try to make sure that no other families have this tragic event happen. I want to especially thank Secretary Duffy, because when we met with him, he took our concerns, he took them to heart, he went to running with it, he showed compassion for not just our family, but for the entire traveling public. And so we're going to stick with him and see this thing through. We're going to modernize the air traffic control system. We're going to get all the air traffic controllers back on the job. And then I really want to thank Chairwoman Harmony. She has led the NTSB in one of the most difficult processes that's happened in years, and she's kept us informed. She's given us every opportunity to have a voice, and we just really appreciate that. From the day that we met with Chairman Cruz, he really set in motion that this is not going to be Sam's legacy to die in vain. 67 really great people lost their lives that night, and there's no reason for that. What we have here is legislation, if it's passed, is going to close some very important safety loopholes so that this never has to happen again.
Thank you so much, Chairman, for asking us to be here today and to take action out of our grief to avoid this type of tragedy from ever happening again. Both Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Cantwell have been so compassionate and demonstrated such empathy for our families. We greatly appreciate the leadership that they have both demonstrated on this topic of aviation safety, not just for our families, but as Tim said, for the flying public, for everyone, whoever sets foot on a plane and flies in our national airspace. In addition, we're very, very thankful for the senators who came together with Chairman Cruz to sponsor the Rotor Act. We appreciate Senator Moran, Marshall, Schmidt, Blackburn, Budd, and Sheehy for their very demonstrated leadership also on this topic. This is a very personal matter for all of us, but we hope that by being here and sharing our story, you all buy into this also, and that you do support the efforts of the Secretary at the Department of Transportation, that you advocate for that additional funding that we need to update the air traffic control systems and all of the systems that control our national airspace. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sherry, Tim, thank you for your strong leadership at a time of great grief and pain. Thank you for using that grief to try to protect the flying public, try to protect every one of us. I know every time now that I land at Reagan, including yesterday just getting here, I suspect I'm not the only one who looks out the window and thinks about what could happen, and we're acting today to protect the flying public going forward. I now want to introduce National Transportation Safety Board Chairwoman Jennifer Homendy to discuss her investigation and her efforts to identify the operational breakdowns and safety gaps in the airspace.
Well, as you heard, today marks 6 months to the day since 67 people died in a mid-air collision over the Potomac River near Ronald Reagan National Airport. That's 67 mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, children, friends, as well as 3 highly respected soldiers who dedicated their lives to defending our nation. I do want to thank Chairman Cruz, Chairman Moran, Secretary Duffy, certainly the administrator, and the families for your tireless and selfless work to improve aviation safety since this tragedy occurred. Tomorrow, the NTSB will meet in public for the beginning of our investigative hearing on this collision. It's a 3-day hearing. We'll meet from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., perhaps longer if needed, and we're going to go through some pretty in-depth discussions on different points of this investigation. An investigative hearing is not like the end of the board meeting where we present our conclusions. It's to develop more facts for the investigation. The rest of the evidence, though, which is in our public docket, will be open at 9 a.m. It's thousands of pages of evidence that will be available publicly at ntsb.gov. Again, it's a fact-finding proceeding. We're not at the point of analysis or issuing safety recommendations. For over 2 decades, though, we've recommended that FAA require ADSB in following a myriad of mid-air collisions: Texas, Hawaii, Georgia, Alaska. In 2008, we sent a letter to FAA stating the board believes that the equipage of aircraft with ADSB in capability will provide, and I want to stress this, an immediate and substantial contribution to safety, especially during operations in and around airports. In 2019, I was the board member on scene for a mid-air collision in Ketchikan, Alaska, involving 2 float planes. 6 people died, 10 others were injured, and we again said we needed ADSB in. That was part of a big part of that report, stating that we hoped that it got mandated, including for passenger aircraft, especially in high traffic areas. Just 2 weeks ago, I got to experience ADSB in by riding jump seat. Flying jump seat in American Air, they outfitted their entire fleet of Airbus A321neos with ADSB in, and it's incredible technology. ADSB, and I can't stress this enough, is a game changer when it comes to safety, and will provide, as we said in 2008, immediate and substantial contribution to safety. This will save lives. This legislation will save lives. So I do want to say thank you to Senator Cruz, again to Senator Moran, Secretary Duffy. There's a lot of bipartisan support for moving ADSB in forward, including with Ranking Member Cantwell and Ranking Member Duckworth. There's momentum in the Commerce Committee, and I'm excited and look forward to working with you to make sure it gets done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now I would like to introduce Senator Moran, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Aviation, Space, and Innovation. Chairman Moran. Oh, right there, Jerry.
Chairman Cruz, thank you for convening this opportunity for us to be together to publicly state our support for legislation that you have introduced, that Senator Marshall and I are joining in sponsoring. I appreciate what Chairman Hamady said about ADSB in and out. I introduced legislation to require that approximately a month after the January 29th tragedy. And I am pleased to see the momentum, and I appreciate Senator Cruz's review of this and inclusion in his legislation, and we look forward to seeing this accomplished. Chair Hamady has explained why it's so important, and we will, in my view, work to see that this legislation becomes law and ADSB in and out become the norm, the required norm, as quickly as we can do so by the supply chain capabilities to exchange what we have today or to add what we don't have today to aircraft across the country. And we're talking both military and commercial, civilian. So this is a major improvement in our opportunities to provide the safety. And it's pleasing to me to have to see the efforts by the families to find meaning in their work to make certain that the tragedy that we experienced 6 months ago today doesn't occur and other families are not impacted in the way that these individuals, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, cousins, friends have been impacted by the loss of life. I'm also pleased to welcome the new FAA administrator to his position. Chair Hamady, I always have high regard for your work, your capabilities to focus us. Today, Chair Hamady gave us a briefing on what these next few days are going to look like with the hearings that are going to take place. And my takeaway is there are so many individual circumstances that all came together. Perhaps it would be nice if we could just put this in one. This was the problem. But the issue is broader than a problem. And we're going to have a lot of work to do with the FAA, with the Department of Defense, and with all of us in Congress to get all of the issues that appear to be developing in air traffic safety handled and improved. And Secretary Duffy, I wanted to tell you today is the 67th anniversary of the creation of NASA by a Kansan better known than me named Dwight Eisenhower. And congratulations on your additional responsibilities, but thank you for not allowing them to intrude upon this. Secretary Duffy, while I'd met him when he was seeking my vote on his nomination, he came by to pay the courtesy call and we had a fine conversation. But sadly, the first time I saw Secretary Duffy at work was on January 29th at DCA and that evening, and I have noticed, determined, and admired your relentless effort to find safety in the circumstances from that night, today, and in the future. And we look forward to working with you. I congratulate the reconciliation bill that provided additional dollars for air traffic safety, and we are appropriating. I'm a member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, and there's another set of billions of dollars in that bill to fund additional safety efforts within the FAA and within air traffic control. So there was, again, I don't know how to say this very well, but from the circumstances that occurred 6 months ago today, I've seen Congress work together. I've seen the administration and the legislative branch come together and the executive branch to make certain that we find the right answers to prevent tragedies from occurring as they did just such a short time ago. And on behalf of all other Kansans, Senator Marshall and I express our condolences once again for the circumstances that originated in our home state. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Moran, and I will say that Senator Moran and Senator Marshall have both been incredible leaders on this, given that so many of the victims of this tragic accident were from Kansas. It obviously struck both of them close to the heart. I now recognize Senator Roger Marshall.
Well, thank you, Senator Cruz, for your leadership and inviting us to participate. And to all my fellow speakers up here, thank you. Good morning to everybody. On January 29, 2025, American Airlines Flight 5343 from Wichita to DCA tragically crashed, claiming 67 lives, including 7 Kansans. Bob and Lori Schrock, Pete, PJ Diaz, Lindsay Fields, Grace Maxwell, Kia Duggins, and Dustin Miller. Their loss weighs heavily, and we owe it to them to ensure their deaths were not in vain. That night, I shared many of the same thoughts that so many of the family members had. Why was the helicopter in that airspace? Was it flying too high? Why did its transponder fail to warn the jet or air traffic control? While we're still awaiting some of those answers, Congress needs to act swiftly. Our proposal legislation, led by Senator Cruz, mandates NTSB technology on aircraft in key airspaces. And for damn sure, they need to turn them on. They need to turn them on when they're in those airspaces. The military, if they're going to be in the airspace, they need to turn on their transponders. This legislation mandates the technology on aircraft in key airspaces studies, barring rotorcraft from DCA during final approaches and orders an Army audit of FAA coordination, pilot training, and NTSB use. These demands were asked for and driven by the victims' families. I hope they know that their voices were listened to and that they're being heard, and appreciate the families just staying at this. Now, no law can bring back the 67 people who we lost, but we can strengthen aviation safety to prevent such a tragedy again. I'm trying to think what was missed today, but I just want to reckon back to a conversation I had with the mayor of Wichita the day after, and I said, what can I do? And she said, what can I tell Wichitans? And she said, the number one thing is you could tell them we won't have helicopters in that airspace anymore. And I reached out to Secretary Duffy and Secretary of Defense Hegseth, and they grounded them all. Grounding's the wrong term. They stopped them from being in that area that day, and I hope we continue to have that commitment until Congress does her job. Echo what Senator Moran said, the one big beautiful bill, which is now law, had $7 billion, $12 billion for modernizing in air traffic control, which was way overdue. And the other response I see the Trump administration doing is accelerating air traffic controllers going through the system. And the Secretary could speak more to that than I can, but from what I understand, over 3,000 people are in some point of training to become air traffic controllers. We've accelerated the process. It's still a very rigorous process to get in the system, added bonuses, doing everything we can to get people in the seats that we need to prevent a tragedy like this again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I now want to recognize the new administrator of the FAA, Brian Bedford, who is here, and Administrator Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz, and thank you especially to the families for 5342. Prior to my confirmation, I was privileged to be able to chat with many of the family members, hear from them their firsthand experiences, and importantly, read the 7-point paper that they put out that would help us identify and close many of the gaps that allowed 5342 to happen in the first place. And Chairman Cruz, you and other members are to be congratulated. Most all of the comments and identified safety weaknesses that the families identified have been incorporated into this key legislation, and I certainly hope it has strong bipartisan support. I want to thank Secretary Duffy for his leadership on this. Day one, it's a terrible way to start a job, but he didn't shrink away from the responsibility to take swift action across the NAS to ensure the safety of the traveling public and to encourage the FAA to dig deeper into data and lean forward into identifying other hot spots around the NAS, which they have accomplished. So again, the legacy is paying dividends for the traveling public that they may not even be aware of. So thank you for that. Chairman Hamady, thank you for your leadership in the investigation. I suspect we're going to have some very uncomfortable conversations over the next 2.5 days, but they need to be had. They need to be had in the clear light of day, and we simply need to put what's in the best interest of the traveling public ahead of any of our own personal interests, perhaps. So I'm pleased to be here and be part of the solution, and I would be remiss if I didn't close by thanking our President Trump's vision to advocate for building and modernizing a brand new air traffic control system. It's long overdue. It's absolutely critical for the safety of the traveling public that we make this investment, get it right, and continue to support advances in technology and in making sure that we have the best people, they receive the best training, and have the best equipment possible to keep our nest safe. So for all of your leadership, everyone gathered here today, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Administrator. And now, finally, I'd like to recognize Senator Ted Budd, who's also a co-sponsor of this legislation and a private pilot himself.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here. You know, I wish we weren't here because I wish this wasn't an anniversary at all. I wish this tragedy had never happened, especially since it was preventable. This hits home because 6 out of the 67 souls that lost their lives that day were either North Carolinians or North Carolina connected, including all 4 members of the Charlotte-based flight crew and one of the helicopter pilots. I'm hopeful that our efforts in Congress starting today are going to make a difference in making our entire air traffic control system and our airspace a lot safer. You know, NTSB, it's a critical safety technology, and mandating that aircraft are equipped with and using this technology, and that's been reiterated several times, and that's absolutely important that it's used. I think that's a key step in making sure that all Americans are safe. And you mentioned
the yeas are 50, the nays are 47. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action. The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of William Kimmett of Virginia to be Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade, signed by 17 senators.
Under the previous order, the mandatory quorum call under Rule 22 has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the nomination of William Kimmett of Virginia to be Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade should be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett,
The Senate voting now on whether to advance the nomination of William Kimmett to be Commerce Undersecretary for International Trade. Then the Chamber plans to recess so senators can meet for their weekly party lunches. When they return at 2:15 p.m. Eastern, another vote series is expected.
It's Ted coming to work, so that's good. All right. There is a vote that is right at the end, so I'm going to take one question, unfortunately. Yes, sir.
I'm Tom Costello with NBC News. If I could ask Secretary Duffy or the Administrator, there's been some confusion. Where do we stand right now on military chopper activity, any chopper activity in and around DCA? There was a prohibition for a while. There was some confusion about how much of that's been lifted, if any, and then secondarily, those choppers, are they required now to be flying with NTSB, or is that still an issue with the military?
Hi, Tom. Good to see you again as well. I can tell you that there is very few exceptions, only for critical emergency missions or for critical military missions, including POTUS. And in those special cases, airspace is closed to commercial traffic while military traffic is in the area. So other than that, the routings have been completely redone, taking them well out of the Class B airspace pattern around DCA.
And choppers must be operating with NTSB.
That's correct, unless they're on an exempted mission, in which case the skies are clear to commercial traffic.
But this chopper was on a training mission, which was viewed at the time as an exempted mission. Is that today still?
That is no longer allowable.
Secretary Duffy, are you still planning to sign an MOU with the Pentagon? Because the Army is still not allowed to fly helicopter missions around the Pentagon. Is that right?
I could take that one as well. We do have an MOU. I'll say I don't think it goes as far as this legislation does, but during the pendency of the legislation, the intent would be to continue to execute on the MOU with the military. I believe we can continue to support our warfighters' training needs by clearing airspace when it's necessary. We don't have to have conflicting traffic.
All right, thank you, and I've got to run because the vote is closing as we speak.
Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin,
The Senate voting now on whether to advance the nomination of William Kimmett to be Commerce Undersecretary for International Trade.
Fisher.
Then the chamber plans to recess so senators can meet for their weekly party lunches. When they return at 2:15 p.m. Eastern, another vote series is expected.
Mrs. Gillibrand.
I'll leave that one up there just for a minute. I have two. So first of all, thank you. While this is up here, I just want to point out two things. The data ended in 2022, which is and it's 2021 tax data. And so this is the year that I came in. And I will tell you, I think there are two states on here because they have different governors that are changing. And I will tell you, Virginia, I know, is changing. And on the other slide, where the other one was, Louisiana. And Louisiana is fundamentally changing. And it's interesting to watch what will happen in Louisiana as well, as they have common sense policies that attract business, reduce the cost of living and the cost of business, and I bet you're going to see Louisiana move as well. So thank you. We can move that.
By the way, this, just so you know, this is the most recent data, but some we're going to get the 2023 numbers sometime in October. So I'll let you know how you're.
Perfect. I already know how we're doing. So, and one of the things I recognize, and I'll just start. First of all, Steve, thank you. Thank you for doing this project, and thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you for shining a spotlight on something that I think has probably been in your DNA for decades, which is to unleash prosperity. How about that for a concept? And to unleash prosperity because you believe in individual liberty, and you believe in free enterprise, and you believe that, in fact, those influences move businesses and people, and we can track this. And that's why I always read every day, and if you don't, read the Unleash Prosperity Hotline every day. Yeah. Because I'm telling you, it is outstanding. It is outstanding.
How do we get it?
UnleashProsperity.com. Go get it. But it's part of my daily reading. And the reason it is because there's always, actually, usually 4 or 5 great nuggets in there that either reinforce something that I have been struggling with and give me a new perspective on it, or plant a new idea. And so thank you. Thank you for always pressing our thinking.
Governor, the reason he likes it is we keep praising all the great things.
Yeah, there we go. Well, there's lots of challenges in there.
About those numbers on crime in Virginia, they're amazing.
They're amazing. I mean, the bottom line is we've dropped murders in Virginia by 30% simply by putting more badges on the street. How about that for an idea? More badges on the street. And by the way, we have the largest training class in our state police academy that we've had since 2018, the 3rd largest one in the history of state police. So guess what? You back the blue, you fund them, you stand behind them when they have challenges, and you celebrate them with their wins. And people want to be police officers in your state. And more police officers means lower crime. That's just that simple. You are not alone in what you do. And Art Laffer has been an amazing friend to me and partner for you. But you also have a great executive director of communications. And I just want to thank Tim Dosher for all your work, Tim, in getting ready today. I don't know where you are, but you're in the room here. So thank you. And then I want to point out Justin Velez-Hagen, who is my deputy chief of staff. And Justin is the keeper of all data. And so thank you, Justin. But what we find is that this concept of migration is not something that people had really grasped onto. I have been talking about this for 5 years. And for 5 years, I have been basically an apostle talking about the fact that if you have fewer customers today in your state, fewer people than you had yesterday, your state is heading in the wrong direction. And when those people take their money with them, and that money represents a disproportionate amount of your state's economic activity, you got a major challenge. And I have to say, Steve and I just hit it off literally like 2 kids in a candy shop, because we started talking about this right when I was running. And I finally found somebody else on the planet that would listen to me. My wife was even not listening to me at that point. She's like, honey, I know this, out-migration, I get it. But at the end of the day, this is at the economic and, by the way, the financial heart of a state. Because one of the things that is going to be on the next chart is states that are running deficits and states that are running surpluses. Because if you are shrinking, you are running a deficit. And if you are growing, you are running a surplus. And it's just that simple. And that's the difference between winning states and losing states. And that's why you can look at the states that are increasing even their share of new jobs and people, and they're the ones that get to invest time and time and time again, and the ones that are consistently offering tax relief time and time again. And how about this for a basic economic cycle? We're going to reduce your taxes. And then we're going to see more people come to my state. And those more people are going to bring with them their income, and they're going to pay taxes. And then we have a surplus. And with that surplus, we get to invest in education and law enforcement and behavioral health, and we get to reduce taxes again. And guess what? More people come. And this virtuous cycle actually works. And we know it works is because that is what we've unleashed in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In 2022, we saw 10 years of data like this, with more people moving away than moving in, on average about 15,000 net out-migration to the other states for 10 years in a row. Now, by the time you get 10 years into that, that's not just billions of economics that are going away, but it's about $500 million a year in tax revenue that disappears. Your tax base goes with them. And so in 2023, after we had our first round of great tax relief, and we had our first round of businesses coming to Virginia, in 2023, for the very first time, Virginia broke the mold. And we were number 9 in the nation for net in-migration, coming from number 40 the year before. That is the big shift. And when that happened, we saw another amazing thing happen. We ran a huge surplus. And that allowed us to go for tax relief again. And that allowed us to invest in all the building blocks again: education, law enforcement, mental health, and by the way, running government more efficiently. And guess what? More people came again, and more businesses came again. And this virtuous cycle works. And today, as we look back over these 4 years, we now have $125 billion of business investment that's been promised to the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have more people working than we've ever had in the history of the state. The 2024 data, again, suggests Virginia's net in-migration. I actually watch all this data, van line data, and anything I can get people to move. I actually stand at the border and count sometimes. But at the end of the day, Allied Van Line says we were number 5 in the nation in net in-migration in 2024. United Van Line says we're a 55-45 net importer. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that gives you real insight into what's happening in your state. And then I get to look at our financials. And Virginia, for the 4th year in a row, is running a multi-billion-dollar surplus. We've had over $10 billion of surpluses in 4 years. Record invested in education, record investment in law enforcement, record investment in behavioral mental health, record investment in taking care of God's green earth, because I believe that if we take care of it, it'll take care of us, and $9 billion in tax relief during this entire time. It works, it works, it works. And the states where it is not working, we see over and over again. And those states continually see out-migration, businesses leaving, and as a result, deficit after deficit. And what do they have to do? Because they refuse to cut spending, they raise taxes. They raise taxes. And all it does is turn their out-migration faucet from medium to high, and before you know it, those states are in trouble. And that's exactly what you see. My friend, Governor Little, who is in Idaho, will frequently say, as he and I were on an economic development panel last week, he says, the very best economic development program I have in the state of Idaho is California. It's true. And I have to say, there's a state just north of us where they have now become the 3rd heaviest tax load in America. We have more people moving here from there by just a huge factor. And in fact, just recently, one of the chairmen of their Senate Economic Development Authority, who voted to raise taxes on business, then moved his business from Maryland to Virginia. It happens. it works. So, Steve, thank you. Thank you for caring so deeply about not unleashing prosperity in itself, but recognizing that we as decision makers can make a decision every day to help our citizens be more prosperous, to help our states be more successful, and the formula is not that hard. We just got to do it. So God bless you. Thank you, and I look forward to the conversation.
All right. We'll take a few questions. I just want to punctuate a few points that the governor made. He kids me all the time because I actually moved from Virginia to Maryland about 6 years ago, and I'm kind of regretting it. And I live in Montgomery County. In Montgomery County, Maryland, I don't know if you're familiar with this. We have a 6% state income tax, and Montgomery County has, I don't know, Virginia, do you allow cities and counties to raise?
No, the cities and localities don't have an income tax,
Right.
but they've all figured out they have
well,
a
Maryland
meals
does.
tax.
Maryland does. So I'm paying a 9.5%, and I'm not rich. I pay 9.5% income tax. So I may be coming back to Virginia thanks to you. So I wanted to just show one other quick thing. I don't know if, Jackie, we have this available. This is the relationship between which states people moved into. It's the chart that shows the income taxes. Do you have that, Jackie? Is this the one? So while she's looking for that, what this chart shows, if we can call it up, is that the states, remember when I was showing you the states that are losing the people the most, the two states that are losing the most people are also the states that have the highest income tax. So in New York, New York City has the highest income tax in the United States. I don't know if you're aware of that. And their rate is now 14.4%. 14.4%. And California, I think, is 13.5%. And this is just math, folks. You can pay 14% and live in New York City, or you can move to Florida, or you can move to Texas and pay 0. And our studies show very compellingly that the tax system has a huge, huge impact on where people are moving to. And that's why, as soon as you started cutting taxes, guess what? People started coming to. Why is this so hard for people to?
Well, one of my thoughts also is if the mayoral election in New York City goes the way it looks like it goes, I've already got a billboard reserved that says, just stop halfway to Florida on 95 and you'll be home.
And look, we laugh about this. This is serious business because, New York City is the most important city in the United States. 8 million people live there. It is the home of Wall Street. It is such an incredible city. And the candidate there has said that he wants to raise the income tax on the rich by another 2 percentage points. And if he's watching this on C-SPAN or some of these other networks, if you do that, I really believe New York City will no longer have Wall Street. They're this close to losing Wall Street. And if you go, by the way, when I used to go to Wall Street 15 years ago versus today, Wall Street's just a ghost town of what it used to be. It's sad. So I don't want that to happen. I hope that the people of New York are smart enough not to let that happen. So with that, why don't we just open it up for questions? Okay, good. So if you've got a question, or do you have any other further comments before we take some questions? Okay, open it up. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Governor and Steve, for this event. Loudoun County is,
okay, can you run to the person?
And a large part because we've got
Thanks. I'll get into
data centers and everything.
Please do.
It does take energy. So can you give us some insight as to what you're doing to make sure that energy is going to be available to power everybody?
So the top factors in a business moving anywhere today have always been talent, a shovel-ready site, a business-friendly environment, and power. And I have to say that list is being retumbled right now as our nation finds itself with a massive power deficit. Right. In fact, we need twice the power generating capacity that we have today just in the next 8 years. And that's to meet the need of a rapidly growing economy. And Virginia has that in spades. Historically, particularly in the last 4 years before I came in, the previous administration passed a Green New Deal. And they basically said, we're going to dismantle all hydrocarbon-based power generation and replace it solely with wind and solar. That's it. That's all you got. And they also based all of that on an economic forecast that had flat growth. No job growth, no economic growth, and by the way, folks, no state growth. And that reflected their view of Virginia's prospects. Now, 4 years later, Virginia's growing like crazy, and we need more power. And so I brought an all-American, all-of-the-above power plan back in late 2022 and said we need it all. We need anything we can build, but particularly we need natural gas, and we've got to go build a lot of natural gas generating capacity, and we need it now. We need to develop nuclear faster than anybody else, and we're not going to dismantle anything that we've got because we can't replace it with weather-dependent power generation. And we have a bunch of solar under development, and we've got an offshore wind, and that stuff was so far down the road when I came in. I was like, just finish it, please. We need it. And so this is the big step for us as a state, which is to meet the power demand that underpins economic opportunity, that underpins jobs and migration movements. So I am cautiously optimistic that we're heading in a reasonable direction, but I will say I need the General Assembly in Richmond, which is controlled by 1 seat in the House and 1 seat in the Senate by the Democrats. I need them to start undoing the Virginia Clean Economy Act, because without us undoing it, we are going to be limited in how fast we can grow. And I don't think Virginians should be limited. I think Virginians should be allowed to run as fast as they can. So this is our next big step. And I've even heard a couple of the senior Democrat leaders saying what I've been saying for 4 years, which is the Virginia Clean Economy Act doesn't work.
So I bet a lot of people, in this room and a lot of people around the country don't realize that the largest data center in the country is there in Loudoun County. A lot of people even in Loudoun County don't know it's there.
Virginia's the largest data center market in the world by a factor of 4.
So are you going to have enough energy? I mean, you need electric
If they
power.
do what I've asked them to do, the short answer is yes. If they reverse trend and stop the development of gas, stop the development of nuclear, and then pick back up the dismantling or decommissioning of our existing power stack, then we could run into real problems. And of course, what comes with that plan, their plan, are utility bills that go through the roof, because they're putting it all on the back of the ratepayers. And one of the great things that we've done is negotiate with all of the data center folks that they can now apply through the State Corporation Commission and get their own customized rate, which forces them to pay for the infrastructure that goes into their power developments, not the ratepayers themselves, who are already suffering from the result of the Green New Deal that was passed 4 years ago.
One of the states that, sorry to interrupt, but one of the states that is, for the first time in a long, long, long time, growing is one of your neighbors, West Virginia. And one of the reasons West Virginia is growing is because they have bountiful energy. And so, and Virginia does too. And so it's frustrating that so many states are.
But one of the things that I have been so encouraged by the leadership in West Virginia is that they recognize they have an advantage. They are reducing tax burdens ahead of the game. And what they've seen as a result is, guess what? Population migration heading to West Virginia. So, I mean, this is not a difficult formula, which is tell your customers you care about them. Your customers are your citizens, and we're going to reduce the tax burdens on you. We're going to create more opportunity for you and your family to live a fabulous life, and the virtuous cycle works.
So if people want to see exactly what the governor's talking about, go to our new website, votewithyourfeet.net, and you can find these migration patterns. And you're exactly right, by the way, that energy is so important to this formula. Other questions or comments?
Hello, Dr. Myrtle Alexander here in Washington, D.C. So we're looking forward and looking at what's taking place now with USDA. How does that affect Washington, Virginia, Maryland, when you're going to have USDA moving out to other states? How will that factor into your numbers?
With what?
The USDA. Right. Oh, beg your pardon.
So let me start. We have a very large number of folks in Virginia who work for the federal government. And in fact, we have, again, a disproportionate number of people who live in Virginia but work in the federal government in other places. They made good decisions. They decided to live in Virginia because we have lower taxes, the roads are better, the schools are better, it's safer, and therefore you should move to Virginia, Steve. What we, of course, are going to see is we're going to see some job reductions. Virginia is, on the face of it, a little protected because a disproportionate number of our jobs are in defense, national security, and the intelligence community, and there's $150 billion more coming into that community. But we are going to see other areas either be moved out of the greater DMV area or reduced in an absolute sense. And you may have seen just recently the Department of Housing and Urban Development moved their headquarters from D.C. to Virginia. And once again, they found great real estate, and that's where their folks wanted to live, work, and raise their family. So the net of it is there will be movement. There will be movement. And then my job is to make sure that when people do experience that dislocation in their employment, and it happened to my family twice when I was growing up. In 7th grade and 11th grade, my dad lost his job. It's rough. But in this case, what I have clearly put in place, I think, is a pathway to a great future. We have 250,000 open and unfilled jobs in Virginia. And I'm going to say that again. 250,000 open and unfilled jobs. And those jobs, about 100,000 of them require a bachelor's degree or greater. So these are really high-paying jobs. And about 110,000 of them are in Northern Virginia. And so there is great opportunity for people to find a new pathway. And then we have laid out, if anybody's curious, at virginiahasjobs.com, a pathway for people to find educational resources if they need a credential or they want to get a master's degree or take a course. We've got all that online ready for people to sign up. We have pathways for people to maintain their healthcare coverage so that they can get through this bridge. And then, of course, the website has the jobs on it, and you can actually search on almost any field and any location. And my goal is to help people migrate quickly from a public sector job at the federal government to another job in Virginia in the private sector or with one of our state agencies.
So, Governor, one of the things that we've talked a lot about, but we can't talk enough about, is the importance of taxation. And as you know, there are 9 states in the United States today that have no income tax at all. And many of them are in the southeast, some of them neighboring states to Virginia. So you've got Texas, you've got Florida, you've got Tennessee, you've got Mississippi just passed a law to phase out their income tax. One of the things that we would like to see at Unleash Prosperity, we have this dream that the entire southeast region of the country, because you're not the only governor in the southeast that's cutting taxes. Almost all of these Republican governors are doing that. This is our dream, to make the Southeast a kind of income tax-free zone, a school choice zone. You've done a lot of school choice. That's a big issue. Right now, right to work. Virginia is a right to work.
Virginia is a right to work state,
That's
and we
huge.
need to elect the correct governor candidate to maintain a
That's
right to work
critical,
status.
because we find that twice as many jobs and people are moving to right-to-work states than forced union states. So just any thoughts about
what you also see is that the states that are aggressively moving to phase out their personal income tax have one single characteristic: unified Republican leadership in their General Assembly and their governor's office. It's just it. It's just true. And so West Virginia talks about it. That's what they're moving toward. You've mentioned Mississippi. And that's why elections matter. And so, I have been in divided government since the day I came in. I will say that common sense does prevail when the doors are shut most of the time, and you can usually convince people with all of the data that we've been talking about that the future of Virginia requires us to have tax relief and to invest in site development and economic development. But the reality is that every time I have moved to really restructure our tax code, I get blocked. And I do think somewhere along the way, Virginia is going to have to wake up and recognize that the states just south of us are eliminating, or at least substantially reducing, both their personal income tax and their corporate tax. And that is a really important milestone. Virginia back in 2012 was one of the low tax states in the Southeast. And now we find ourselves chasing in order to keep up with the tax reductions that have been placed out. So again, the formula is really straightforward. I have been advocating and an apostle for it since the day I was elected. And the states who figure it out are the ones that are going to continue to compete and win, and the ones that don't are going to fall behind.
Well, that's what Vote With Your Feet.net is all about. So one other issue I wanted to bring up with you, you mentioned energy, and thanks, Ann, for bringing that up, because I agree with her and you that is a huge issue. I don't think a lot of states are prepared for the increased demand. It could be double or even triple over the next 10 years. The other issue, of course, is housing. And we have a housing shortage in the United States. Trump has talked a lot about this. We've been doing our analysis, and I'd love to get your perspective as a governor. It's pretty clear that the states and the cities that have the worst housing shortages are states that have two things. One is rent control, and the other is very strict zoning laws that don't allow multifamily homes to be built. Are you doing? What are your thoughts about that? Are you doing anything, Virginia?
So on top of that, I think you should have a fourth page on Vote With Your Feet, which is just housing development by the numbers. And you literally can see the number of homes either based on the current census of homes or per capita. And you will also see that these same areas that are growing the most actually have the largest home production. They just do. And states that are struggling with home production are the ones that are losing people. And then there's folks like Virginia where we straddle. And Virginia's got a challenge. It's been one of my big issues, which is so much of home construction and the zoning for home building is handled at the local level. And the state, we have streamlined regulations. We've taken out 80,000 regs in Virginia. 25% of our reg base we have streamlined. It saves people $1.2 billion a year. We've taken $25,000 out of the cost of a home by redoing the regulations around a home. But the flip side is, if the local authorities are going to continue to proffer people to death, and those of you in the real estate industry know what that is, they just layer on requirement after requirement after requirement, and before you know it, it becomes uneconomic to build medium-priced homes. And the only homes that make sense to build are big ones, because you can overcome the development cost by the absolute price of the house. And so this is a huge thing for us. And I have really started to put a huge amount of pressure on our localities, to the point where if you want economic development assistance, you got to come to me with a housing plan on how you're going to enable the construction of housing units to be workforce housing for people who are going to move there.
We've got time for one or two more quick questions if you've got one, sir.
Okay. My name is Marnix van Rij. Actually, I'm from the Netherlands, as you might hear. We just moved, my wife and myself, to Virginia last year.
But I'm American.
But she's American. I have a question, because I'm pretty impressed about what you just said. And what we do see, the Netherlands is also it's a relatively small country, but a big economy. We are one of the major investors in the United States, both companies but also institutional investors. Your president has concluded a trade deal with the EU, and as you know, part of that is an investment of at least 750 billion in the United States. How are you going to promote Virginia, especially for foreign investors? Because I'm a former Minister of Taxation in the Netherlands. So I heard you talking about the personal income tax and the corporate income tax. These are crucial factors for foreign companies to invest. And I would love to see at least Dutch and European companies investing in Virginia.
Okay, great question.
Great question.
And
Thank you.
we live in Falls Church.
Hooray. I hope everybody that doesn't live in Virginia is feeling compelled to move. So thank you. And so let me just tell you what we've been doing. First of all, we have had just a massive uptick over the last 3 years in businesses committing to expand, build, and grow in Virginia. And to put it in context, we're about $125 billion of committed expansion capital. and that's more than the previous 2 administrations combined over 4 years. So big, big movement in companies wanting to be in Virginia because we've worked hard to make Virginia business friendly. We have shovel-ready sites. We solve power problems. We have a great workforce. Companies want to come. So interestingly, as soon as President Trump signed the deal with the UK, I was in the office of the largest publicly traded company in the UK trying to convince AstraZeneca to move to Virginia. 33 days later, they announced $50 billion commitment to America, and the biggest piece of it in Virginia. Last week, I was on the phone with a whole bunch of Japanese companies, convincing them to come to Virginia. And I've started today with all my European friends. And I get up really, really early, and so at 5:30 I am smiling and dialing. So I'm 6 hours ahead in Europe, and I'm calling all of them. But the bottom line is, there's a moment here where there's an investment decision to be made. And whoever's there first is going to have the best chance to explain why you should come to Virginia. For those of you who like football, I am in the SEC of economic development. I mean, I'm competing against Tennessee and North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Texas all the time. And I got to get there first.
How much you paying those quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, NIL's another problem. But that, to me, it is having a great value proposition, and then getting in front of the decision makers and helping them understand why Virginia is the right place to be. Listen, we win more than our fair share, but anybody that's got a good lead for me, I'll take it, and I promise that we'll follow up by tomorrow. No issue at all. Thank you.
Last question, and then we're going to cut this off. So.
How about this side?
I don't want to abuse your time.
No, I'm good.
All right, so we'll take a couple more, but we'll go speed round.
All right, real quick. As an economist, it's great you're talking about taxes, talking about regulations. Those are key to coming in. But also the underlying issue is you got a special election in 11th District, which I'm in, and we have a governor race and lieutenant governor race. What are your thoughts on all that?
Okay, so, hold on. Yeah. We'll just take a couple, and then I'll...
Okay, we'll clump them all up.
Yeah.
My question, well, I did come from Texas 2.5 years ago, so I feel safe in this room saying that. My question is I'm into healthcare policy, and actually one of my dreams is to get a research institution. I did go to law school to study healthcare policy, and I know that Virginia has CON laws, the Certificate of Need laws. And some of the states, like Texas and Florida, have kind of eased up on those certificates to make it a little easier for competition in the healthcare industry, which will drive prices down. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that and possibly changes in that, since they're so all old and outdated.
And that, while you're, by the way, as you probably know, our mutual friend Arthur Laffer is really into this idea of healthcare price transparency. So could you kind of add that into the mix and take those on? Yeah, and then we'll take one over here.
So first of all, we have a giant election in Virginia, actually two. September 9th is CD11. That's a special election. And then we have a great candidate. I was with him this morning. But on top of that, we've got a big election on November the 4th. And so elections matter. I can't put it any other way. I mean, if anybody hasn't figured out that elections have consequences, they have not seen the nation in the last 6 months. That's true. I mean, think of the difference today than where we were this time last year. And so elections have consequences. We've got to win elections. We won in 2021. We've got to win in 2025. And so anybody who is in Virginia, we need you to get out to vote. And let me tell you, vote for Winsome Earl Sears for governor. She will continue what we're doing and do a great job. We'll do a great job. On the healthcare front, first of all, I am a big fan of competition. And therefore, I would look forward to inviting you to help me grease the skids with our General Assembly on why it is a good thing. Remember, I've got people on the other side who, I always talk about cutting red tape, and I've started to change my tune. I call it cutting blue tape, because we know where the tape comes from. And so I need some help cutting some blue tape. That'd be awesome. Okay. And then finally, price transparency is critical. And it's critical because no one really understands what things cost, because you cannot see a look-through price to them. And just start with pharmaceuticals. I mean, we cannot tell what pharmaceuticals cost, and particularly with the middlemen, the PBMs, you really can't tell what they cost. And so we need net look-through pricing in healthcare, which then will allow us to allocate resources the right way in order to get at those areas where prices really aren't reflective of good supply and demand, and other ways to work to bring down prices where we really are seeing patients taken advantage of. And I think that's what's happening. So,
Bill.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So just
we'll take these last two. And you guys, you go, and then you go, and then we'll stop.
Absolutely, thanks. So just one. Well, thank you for coming, Governor. And I agree that immigration is definitely better than the alternative about
Can you
migration.
put your microphone?
Sure, absolutely.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 47, and the motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Department of Commerce, William Kimmett of Virginia, to be Undersecretary for International Trade.
Under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.
The Senate's going to allow lawmakers to attend their weekly party lunches, and they'll return at 2:15 p.m. Eastern. When they do, more votes on President Trump's executive nominations. Senate Majority Leader Thune also planning work this week on the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs spending bill. As always, live coverage of the Senate here on C-SPAN 2.
C-SPAN, Democracy Unfiltered. We're funded by these television companies and more, including Charter Communications.
Charter is proud to be recognized as one of the best internet providers, and we're just getting started, building 100,000 miles of new infrastructure to reach those who need it most.
Charter Communications supports C-SPAN as a public service, along with these other television providers, giving you a front row seat to democracy.
The law establishing marketing standards for grains and oilseeds is set to expire at the end of September. This afternoon, a Senate Agriculture Committee hearing will look at reauthorizing the U.S. Grain Standards Act. Watch live at 3 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, our free mobile video app, or online at cspan.org.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon sat down for a discussion with Colorado Governor Jared Polis to talk about federal funding that was released to states for local education resources. This is from the National Governors Association meeting in Colorado Springs. It's about 40 minutes.
Thank you, Secretary McMahon. We want to begin with what, and probably many of our governors have heard. It's possible some haven't. We've been busy. There's some good news. And as you know, many of us were very worried about several title funds that our school districts had been expected that were formulaically distributed. It was top of mind for so many of us. And we're very pleased that you were able to announce earlier today that those funds have become unfrozen and will be quickly sent to school districts. So thank you.
Very happy about that.
My question is, if you can shed some light on how we can prevent these kinds of communications gaps or discrepancies in the first place, kind of how did this happen? Can you ensure that whatever the federal government is going to do in education, can we ensure that we kind of know it before, right? Because this is the biggest problem with this one is the school year, for many schools, they kind of start July 1st. As teachers are coming back like next week. How can we better communicate to make sure this chaos and uncertainty doesn't occur again around funding and that people know things earlier?
Well, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I've had the opportunity to meet with several of the governors one-on-one today, and I've enjoyed that very much. So thank you for your warm welcome and your hospitality. No guarantees for me that we'll eliminate all the communication gaps that do happen, but I can say part of it is just the transition aspect. The other aspect was that we took some time in the Office of Management Budget, took some time to really review the title funding, to look at all the programs, et cetera, before they were released, and so they were well satisfied, and so now those funds are going to be going out. I would think now we've reviewed them, looked at that process so that a year from now, we wouldn't find ourselves in the same situation.
We appreciate that. So on page 34 of our report, we talk about consider a more effective federal-state partnership in education. And two areas that the federal government has played a very important role, and I want to get your thoughts on the role going forward, is making sure that we are truly making progress for students in two ways. One is, if we are measuring a metric of improving graduation rates, we want to make sure that one way that states can do that is not simply to dumb down the standards and make it easier to graduate. If we are looking at improving math scores, we want to make sure the answer is not you make the math test easier. So the federal government has been the fair referee in that process through supporting NAEP, through supporting strong standards development at the state level. The second piece of the federal role the federal government has played is universality, meaning everybody needs to be tested, everybody should be accounted for, we need to look at the progress of every student. How do we make sure that states aren't able to say, we got results up because guess what, this 20% of the kids we swept under the rug, or we don't know where they are, we didn't look at them, and that's across every demographic. So how do you lean into making sure that whatever form it takes, the federal government can play a constructive role in being that fair referee and making sure that every student means every student?
Well, thank you for that. And we don't plan to make any changes in terms of eliminating those tests that are so critical. We've already renegotiated the NAEP contract, so that is going forward and ready to be implemented as you would have expected.
across this country, all corners of this country, by those wildfires. I will say that I'm pleased to see the extraordinary level of cooperation on all levels of government with respect to addressing the challenges that we're seeing. Leadership, obviously, by the provinces, but the federal government across seven different ministries is involved in protections, and the first responders and the volunteers and the communities, Indigenous peoples, making the best of a tragic situation. So thank you all, and we will continue to work together, and I think as well, I'll just underscore the conversation we had in Saskatoon as First Ministers about structurally what we can do, recognizing this is an ongoing issue. Les points centrales de notre rencontre aujourd'hui seront les relations commerciales actuelles avec les États-Unis et les mesures que nous pouvons prendre afin de bâtir une économie canadienne forte, la plus forte que possible. We will have a discussion on the current state of negotiations with the United States. I will say that, as you are aware, our senior ministers, my chief of staff, myself, were engaged in continuous discussions. Minister LeBlanc will be reinforcing those discussions over the next few days in Washington with the United States. We are looking for the best deal for Canada. We're only going to accept the best deal for Canada. That is very much informed by our discussions. We understand as well that we all understand that the global trade environment is changing, and there are some countries that are pulling back, that are restricting market access, but there's even more countries that are opening up to market access, and the premiers have helped lead this with individual trade initiatives to Asia, to Europe, with partners around the world, and we are building on those, and part of what we will discuss is how we can be best coordinated to building positive trade relationships with reliable partners. What we collectively can most control is building a stronger economy, moving from reliance to resilience and division to unity. That will require two things. First, support for affected industries. Lumber, steel, aluminum, automobiles, particularly. We had an example of that last week with a series of measures that we announced. We'll discuss the nature of those measures and how they integrate. But crucially, what we're looking to do is support those industries to build bridges, to build a stronger Canadian economy, to build forward. So if it's lumber, it's building more houses in Canada. It's developing new markets around the world as we work with the Americans. Secondly, we rightly focused in Saskatoon in the start of June on major projects. And since then, and I want to thank you individually and collectively for your support, since then the One Canadian Economy Act, the federal act, has received royal assent. It's now law. Our new federal major projects office will be open by Labor Day, providing a single point of contact for governments, proponents, and communities for proposals. With that is this shift in attitude of the federal government towards major new projects from why to how. Why build to how to build, and how to work together in order to build. And part of that how is and you had a meeting yesterday, I know, with First Nations. Part of that is continuous engagement with Indigenous peoples. These will be critical to our success. We met with hundreds of First Nations rights holders as well as the FN last week. I will be meeting with the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee 2 days from now in Inuvik, and at the start of August with Métis leadership to begin the process of setting out how we are going to cooperate. Les Canadiens nous ont donné un mandat, celui de réaliser de grands projets. Pour aller de l'avant, nous avons besoin que vous continuiez à travailler ensemble pour proposer des idées et bâtir un consensus autour des projets que vous souhaitez concrétiser. C'est comme ça que nous pouvons créer une seule économie canadienne connectée par des projets majeurs alimentés par l'énergie canadienne, transformée par la technologie canadienne et façonnée par les travailleurs canadiens. I would also like to commend the series of free trade agreements that have been signed between the provinces. And Premier Ford, I know there's been a flurry of additional activity. Premier Smith, everyone, Premier Houston, others leading this. This network, this web of free trade agreements is significant for our country. It's what Canadians want, what our citizens want. As part of our federal legislative agenda has been to remove all federal impediments to free trade. We're not the biggest problem here, as you would expect, challenge, but we've following your example, we've felt it's critical that we get out of the way of Canadians being able to work where they want and to buy what they want. Bottom line is Canadians can be our own best customer, and we're making sure that's the case, and we can give ourselves far more than anyone else can take away and control our destiny together and build.
Clerk will call the roll.
I look forward to the discussion. Premier Ford, thank you for indulging me, and I'll pass the word to you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Prime Minister. Welcome to Muskoka. Welcome to Huntsville. It's great to have you here with the premiers for the Council of the Federation. And we've just had some really good meetings, and we're going to continue to have great meetings, great communication. And I also want to take the opportunity to acknowledge my friend, Minister LeBlanc. It's always great to see your smiling face, and he's just a great person. I consider him a friend. First, I want to welcome Premier Pemberton. Welcome to the table. Welcome to the family, and we're going to do great work together for the folks in Yukon. Second, PJ, you've become a really good friend to all of us. Thank you for your contributions to the Council of Federation, and we're going to miss you. You'll always have a home with us. We'll always be best pals, and I want to thank you and your beautiful family for coming to Muskoka, and I look forward to having you back in the near future as well. And Prime Minister, it's so important that we hear from you about the status of the negotiations with the United States. And I always say I'll always have the Prime Minister's back dealing with President Trump. We all know he can say one thing one day, and he'll be out on Fox News or wherever, changing everything. So we need to stay united. We're all hoping for the best and prepared to do our part, each province, each territory, to make sure that President Trump understands one thing, that we're his #1 customer. I've always said this. We buy more products, Canada, than China, Japan, UK, France, and I used to say Korea, but they switched it up to Mexico because they're within the free trade, more than all of them combined. And he needs to understand that when he goes out there and he says, I don't need Canada. Well, I guess he doesn't need Premier Smith's oil. He doesn't need, our great Premier Moe's potash and uranium, or Ontario's high-grade nickel, or any other critical mineral that we buy, and all the widgets, I say, that we buy off of the U.S. If we were a standalone country, which I'd never recommend, we'd be the U.S.'s third largest trading partner in the world, Ontario alone. That's what he needs to do. The high-grade nickel, as I said, or the great aluminum that comes from Quebec. These are just a fraction of the items that he needs us, and many more areas. And I've always said President Trump increases tariffs. This is my personal opinion. I don't speak on behalf of COF. We need to make sure we match tariff by tariff, dollar for dollar, and hit them back as hard as we possibly can. There's one thing President Trump understands, his strength. He doesn't understand or appreciate weakness. He will roll over us like a cement roller if you show an ounce of weakness with the president, in my opinion. And as well, at the same time, we need the federal government to be ready, as we are. We're putting $11 billion to support businesses, communities, people's jobs, industries, and I know the federal government is ready to step in there and support industries. Support industries, and I'm speaking for Ontario, the steel sector. I know, Scott, you have a steel company, and so do you. A few of you actually have steel companies as well as Susan and Danielle. I understand. I think you have steel companies there, so it's a big sector in our sectors. But we need to make sure that we start onshoring everything we possibly can. And again, I'm speaking for Ontario. We need to start producing I-beams here in Ontario. Our Toronto and Greater Toronto area has more cranes in the sky in a slow construction period than the top 10 cities in the U.S. And what those cranes do, they carry U.S. I-beams or rebar. Before this happened, I didn't realize we don't make rebar or I-beams here, but we're going to start making I-beams and steel, aluminum cans that we all drink from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Labatt's, Molson's, private label craft brewers just in Ontario buy 150 million cans. What happens? They get 25% tariff on the way down, 25% tariff on the way back. Well, those days are done. We're bringing companies to manufacture and print the cans and form the cans, and that goes for tin cans as well. DeFasco in Hamilton makes tin, ships it all the way out to California. They make the tin cans and they ship them all the way back. Well, that has to come to an end too. We need to send them a strong message. We don't have to take a back seat to anyone in the world, and we sure the heck don't have to take a back seat to President Trump. Again, Prime Minister, I want to thank you for joining us for this FMM. It's refreshing to some of us that have been around this table for some time to have a Prime Minister that has our backs, that are out there. He's a great community builder.
Because for 40 years, while those great American factories closed their doors, we know what went right along with them. It was great American jobs, it was great American dignity, and it was great American wages. And we know that because we're making smarter decisions in Washington, D.C., we're going to reward all of you for the great work that you're doing, and we're going to reward American companies for investing in American workers, not foreign workers,
together. And to touch on a number of major issues. Premier Hogan, you're the latest manifestation of this, and I think we all want to begin by acknowledging what Premier Moe, Premier Canoe, Premier Ford, Premier Legault, all of us have been going through with this terrible wildfire season. And our hearts go to those families that are affected literally across this country, all corners of this country by those wildfires. I will say that I'm pleased to see the extraordinary level of cooperation on all levels of government with respect to addressing the challenges that we're seeing. Leadership, obviously, by the provinces, but the federal government across seven different ministries is involved in protections, and the first responders and the volunteers in the communities, Indigenous peoples, making the best of a tragic situation. So thank you all, and
not the federal government. Ain't that right?
We will continue to work together, and I think as well, I'll just underscore the conversation we had in Saskatoon as First Ministers about structurally what we can do, recognizing this is an ongoing issue. Les points centrales de notre rencontre aujourd'hui seront les relations commerciales actuelles avec les États-Unis et les mesures que nous pouvons prendre afin de bâtir une économie canadienne forte, la plus forte que possible. We will have a discussion on the current state of negotiations with the United States. I will say that, as you are aware, our senior ministers, my chief of staff, myself, were engaged in continuous discussions. Minister LeBlanc will be reinforcing those discussions over the next few days in Washington with the United States. We are looking for the best deal for Canada. We are only going to accept the best deal for Canada. That is very much informed by our discussions. We understand as well that we all understand that the global trade environment is changing, and there are some countries that are pulling back, that are restricting market access. But there's even more countries that are opening up to market access. And the premiers have helped lead this with individual trade initiatives to Asia, to Europe, with partners around the world. We are building on those, and part of what we will discuss is how we can be best coordinated to building positive trade relationships with reliable partners. What we collectively can most control is building a stronger economy, moving from alliance to resilience and division to unity. That will require two things. First, support for affected industries, lumber, steel, aluminum, automobiles, particularly. We had an example of that last week with a series of measures that we announced. We'll discuss the nature of those measures and how they integrate. But crucially, what we're looking to do is support those industries to build bridges, to build a stronger Canadian economy, to build forward. So if it's lumber, it's building more houses in Canada. It's developing new markets around the world as we work with the Americans. Secondly, we rightly focused in Saskatoon in the start of June on major projects. And since then, and I want to thank you individually and collectively for your support, since then the One Canadian Economy Act, the federal act, has received royal assent. It's now law. Our new federal major projects office will be open by Labor Day, providing a single point of contact for governments, proponents, and communities for proposals. With that is this shift in attitude of the federal government towards major new projects from why to how. Why build to how to build, and how to work together in order to build. And part of that how is, and you had a meeting yesterday, I know, with First Nations. Part of that is continuous engagement with Indigenous peoples. These will be critical to our success. We met with hundreds of First Nations rights holders as well as the FN last week. I will be meeting with the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee 2 days from now in Inuvik, and at the start of August with Métis leadership to begin the process of setting out how we are going to cooperate. Les Canadiens nous ont donné un mandat, celui de réaliser de grands projets. Pour aller de l'avant, nous avons besoin que vous continuiez à travailler ensemble pour proposer des idées et bâtir un consensus autour des projets que vous souhaitez concrétiser. C'est comme ça que nous pouvons créer une seule économie canadienne, connectée par des projets majeurs, alimentée par l'énergie canadienne, transformée par la technologie canadienne et façonnée par les travailleurs canadiens. I would also like to commend the series of free trade agreements that have been signed between the provinces. And Premier Ford, I know there's been a flurry of additional activity. Premier Smith, everyone, Premier Houston, others leading this. This network, this web of free trade agreements is significant for our country. It's what Canadians want, what our citizens want. As part of our federal legislative agenda has been to remove all federal impediments to free trade. We're not the biggest problem here, as you would expect, challenge, but we've following your example, we felt it's critical that we get out of the way of Canadians being able to work where they want and to buy what they want. Bottom line is Canadians can be our own best customer, and we're making sure that's the case, and we can give ourselves far more than anyone else can take away and control our destiny together and build. I look forward to the discussion. Premier Ford, thank you for indulging me, and I'll pass the word to you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Prime Minister. Welcome to Muskoka. Welcome to Huntsville. It's great to have you here with the premiers for the Council of Federation. And we've just had some really good meetings, and we're going to continue to have great meetings, great communication, and I also want to take the opportunity to acknowledge my friend, Minister LeBlanc. It's always great to see your smiling face, and he's just a great person. I consider him a friend. First, I want to welcome Premier Pemberton. Welcome to the table. Welcome to the family, and we're going to do great work together for the folks in Yukon. Second, PJ, you've become a really good friend to all of us. Thank you for your contributions to the Council of Federation, and we're going to miss you, but you'll always have a home with us. We'll always be best pals, and I want to thank you and your beautiful family for coming to Muskoka, and I look forward to having you back in the near future as well.
Challenging in recent memory for American farmers and ranchers.
Prime Minister, it's so important that we hear from you about the status of the negotiations with the United States, and I always say I'll always have the Prime Minister's back dealing with President Trump. We all know he can say one thing one day, and he'll be out on Fox News or wherever, changing everything. So we need to stay united. We're all hoping for the best and prepared to do our part, each province, each territory, to make sure that President Trump understands one thing, that we're his #1 customer. I've always said this. We buy more products, Canada, than China, Japan, UK, France, and I used to say Korea, but they switched it up to Mexico because they're within the free trade, more than all of them combined. And he needs to understand that when he goes out there and he says, I don't need Canada, well, I guess he doesn't need Premier Smith's oil. He doesn't need, our great Premier Moe's potash and uranium, or Ontario's high-grade nickel, or any other critical mineral that we buy, and all the widgets, I say, that we buy off of the U.S. If we were a standalone country, which I never recommend, we'd be the U.S.'s third largest trading partner in the world, Ontario alone. That's what he needs to do. The high-grade nickel, as I said, or the great aluminum that comes from Quebec. These are just a fraction of the items that he needs us, and many more areas. And I've always said, President Trump increases tariffs. This is my personal opinion. I don't speak on behalf of COF. We need to make sure we match tariff by tariff, dollar for dollar, and hit them back as hard as we possibly can. There's one thing President Trump understands, is strength. He doesn't understand or appreciate weakness. He will roll over us like a cement roller if you show an ounce of weakness with the president, in my opinion. And as well, at the same time, we need the federal government to be ready, as we are. We're putting $11 billion to support businesses, communities, people's jobs, industries, and I know the federal government is ready to step in there and support industries. Support industries, and I'm speaking for Ontario, the steel sector. I know, Scott, you have a steel company, and so do you. A few of you actually have steel companies as well. Susan and Danielle, I understand. I think you have steel companies there, so it's a big sector in our sectors. But we need to make sure that we start onshoring everything we possibly can. And again, I'm speaking for Ontario. We need to start producing I-beams. Here in Ontario, our Toronto, the Greater Toronto area has more cranes in the sky in a slow construction period than the top 10 cities in the U.S. And what those cranes do, they carry U.S. I-beams or rebar. Before this happened, I didn't realize we don't make rebar or I-beams here, but we're going to start making I-beams of steel, aluminum cans that we all drink from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Labatt's, Molson's, private label craft brewers just in Ontario buy 150 million cans. What happens? They get 25% tariff on the way down, 25% tariff on the way back. Well, those days are done. We're bringing companies to manufacture and print the cans and form the cans. And And that goes for tin cans as well. DeFasco in Hamilton makes tin, ships it all the way up to California. They make the tin cans and they ship them all the way back.
It's a way of
Well,
life.
that has to come to an end too. We need to send them a strong message. We don't have to take a back seat to anyone in the world, and we sure the heck don't have to take a back seat to President Trump. Again, Prime Minister, I want to thank you for joining us for this FMM. It's refreshing to some of us that have been around this table for some time to have a Prime Minister that has our backs, that are out there. He's a great community builder.
It means they won't have to spend time and money on complicated estate planning to ensure their operation stays intact after they die. And it means their kids won't have to sell all or part of the family farm just to settle a tax bill. Madam President, agriculture is a tough way of life. It's filled with uncertainty and risk.
Thank you for giving
we depend on the men and women who work hard every day to produce the food, fuel,
together and to touch on a number of major issues.
We owe them.
Premier Hogan, you're the latest manifestation of this, which and I think we all want to begin by acknowledging what Premier Moe, Premier Canoe, Premier Ford, Premier Legault, all of us have been going through with these this terrible wildfire season. And our hearts go to those families that are affected literally across this country, all corners of this country by those wildfires. I will say that
including the
pleased to see the extraordinary level of cooperation on all levels of government with respect to addressing the challenges that we're seeing. Leadership, obviously, by the provinces, but the federal government across seven different ministries is involved in protections and the first responders and the volunteers and the communities, Indigenous peoples, making the best of a tragic situation. So thank you all, and you know, we will continue to work together, and I think as well, I'll just underscore the conversation we had in Saskatoon as First Ministers about structurally what we can do, recognizing this is an ongoing issue. Les points centrales de notre rencontre aujourd'hui seront les relations commerciales actuelles avec les États-Unis et les mesures que nous pouvons prendre afin de bâtir une économie canadienne forte, la plus forte que possible. We will have a discussion on the current state of negotiations with the United States. I will say that, as you are aware, our senior ministers, my chief of staff, myself, we're engaged in continuous discussions. Mr. LeBlanc will be reinforcing those discussions over the next few days in Washington with the United States. We are looking for the best deal for Canada. We're only going to accept the best deal for Canada. That is very much informed by our discussions. We understand as well that we all understand that the global trade environment is changing, and there are some countries that are pulling back, that are restricting market access, but there's even more countries that are opening up to market access, and the premiers have helped lead this with individual trade initiatives to Asia, to Europe, with partners around the world, and we are building on those, and part of what we will discuss is how we can be best coordinated to building positive trade relationships with reliable partners. What we collectively can most control is building a stronger economy, moving from reliance to resilience and division to unity. That will require two things. First, support for affected industries, lumber, steel, aluminum, automobiles. Particularly, we had an example of that last week with a series of measures that we announced. We'll discuss the nature of those measures and how they integrate. But crucially, what we're looking to do is support those industries to build bridges, to build a stronger Canadian economy, to build forward. So if it's lumber, it's building more houses in Canada. It's developing new markets around the world as we work with the Americans. Secondly,
Anybody who voted against it, I think
we rightly focused in Saskatoon in the start of June on major projects. And since then, and I want to thank you individually and collectively for your support, since then the One Canadian Economy Act, the federal act, has received royal assent. It's now law. Our new federal major projects office will be open by Labor Day, providing a single point of contact for governments, proponents, and communities for proposals. With that is this shift in attitude of the federal government towards major new projects from why to how. Why build to how to build, and how to work together in order to build. And part of that how is, and you had a meeting yesterday, I know, with First Nations. Part of that is continuous engagement with Indigenous peoples. These will be critical to our success. We met with hundreds of First Nations rights holders as well as the FN last week. I will be meeting with the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee 2 days from now in Inuvik, and at the start of August with Métis leadership to begin the process of setting out how we are going to cooperate. Les Canadiens nous ont donné un mandat, celui de réaliser de grands projets. Pour aller de l'avant, nous avons besoin que vous continuiez à travailler ensemble pour proposer des idées et bâtir un consensus autour des projets que vous souhaitez concrétiser. C'est comme ça que nous pouvons créer une seule économie canadienne connectée par des projets majeurs, alimentée par l'énergie canadienne, transformée par la technologie canadienne et façonnée par les travailleurs canadiens. I would also like to commend the series of free trade agreements that have been signed between the provinces. And Premier Ford, I know there's been a flurry of additional activity. Premier Smith, everyone, Premier Houston, others leading this. This network, this web of free trade agreements is significant for our country. It's what Canadians want, what our citizens want. As part of our federal legislative agenda has been to remove all federal impediments to free trade. We're not the biggest problem here, as you would expect, challenge, but we following your example, we felt it's critical that we get out of the way of Canadians being able to work where they want and to buy what they want. Bottom line is Canadians can be our own best customer, and we're making sure that's the case, and we can give ourselves far more than anyone else can take away and control our destiny together and build. I look forward to the discussion. Premier Ford, thank you for indulging me, and I'll pass the word to you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Prime Minister. Welcome to Muskoka. Welcome to Huntsville. It's great to have you here with the premiers for the Council of Federation. And we've just had some really good meetings, and we're going to continue to have great meetings, great communication. And I also want to take the opportunity to acknowledge my friend, Minister LeBlanc. It's always great to see your smiling face. And he's just a great person. I consider him a friend. First, I want to welcome Premier Pemberton. Welcome to the table. Welcome to the family. And we're going to do great work together for the folks in Yukon. Second, PJ, you've become a really good friend to all of us. Thank you for your contributions to the Council of Federation, and we're going to miss you, but you'll always have a home with us. We'll always be best pals, and I want to thank you and your beautiful family for coming to Muskoka, and I look forward to having you back in the near future as well. And Prime Minister, it's so important that we hear from you about the status and the negotiations with the United States. And I always say I'll always have the Prime Minister's back dealing with President Trump. We all know he can say one thing one day, and he'll be out on Fox News or wherever, changing everything. So we need to stay united. We're all hoping for the best and prepared to do our part, each province, each territory, to make sure that
to make sure your
President
kids can go
Trump
see a
understands
doctor,
one
you're
thing,
still going to have access to
that
Medicaid.
we're his number one
Who's not
customer.
going to have access to that Medicaid is
I've always
people
said
who are in
this.
the United States
We buy more
illegally
products,
and
Canada,
people who refuse to
than
even look for a
China,
job. Now, I
Japan,
don't know about you all, but while all of these
UK,
folks
France,
here are
and I used to say
working hard,
Korea,
paying
but they
their
switched it up to
taxes,
Mexico
doing
because they're
everything
within the
they
free
can to
trade.
bust their rear ends to give
More
their
than
kids
all
a
of them
better life.
combined.
I don't
And
think
he
that we
needs
should
to
reward
understand
people who aren't
that when
even
he goes
searching
out
for a
there and he
job.
says,
And I think that's
I
a
don't
very
need
simple
Canada.
principle that so long as
Well,
you're trying
I
to
guess
get a
he
job,
doesn't need
so long as you're in this country
Premier
legally,
Smith's
we're
oil.
going to
He
make it
doesn't
possible for you
need,
to afford a doctor.
you know,
That is
our
the
great
principle
Premier
that
Mo's
drives us, and that's
potash
the
and
principle you're
uranium,
going to see in the Trump
or
administration's
Ontario's
policy
high-grade nickel,
over
or
the
any
next
other
3.5
critical
years.
mineral
So what I'd say
that
to
we
people
buy, and
is,
all
if you're
the
looking for
widgets,
work,
I say,
we're
that
gonna
we
help you
buy
look for work. If you're
off
looking
of
for a job,
the
we're gonna
U.S.
try
If
to
we
make
were
it
a
so there are better
standalone country,
jobs
which I'd never
available to you.
recommend,
But so
we'd
long
be
as
the
you're
U.S.'s
working
third
hard
largest
or
trading
trying to
partner in
find
the
a
world,
job,
Ontario
you are
alone.
not going to suffer because of this policy.
That's what he needs to do.
That's
The
our commitment to you,
high-grade
and that's what
nickel,
we're
as I
gonna fight to
said,
make
or
happen.
the great aluminum that
We'll do
comes
one more
from
question.
Quebec. These are just a fraction of the items that he needs us, and many more areas. And I've always said President Trump increases tariffs. This is my personal opinion. I don't speak on behalf of COF. We need to make sure we match tariff by tariff, dollar for dollar, and hit them back as hard as we possibly can. There's one thing President Trump understands, his strength. He doesn't understand or appreciate weakness. He will roll over us like a cement roller if you show an ounce of weakness with the president, in my opinion. And as well, at the same time, we need the federal government to be ready, as we are. We're putting $11 billion to support businesses, communities, people's jobs, industries, and I know the federal government is ready to step in there and support industries. Support industries, and I'm speaking for Ontario, the steel sector. I know, Scott, you have a steel company, and so do you. A few of you actually have steel companies as well as Susan and Danielle. I understand. I think you have steel companies there, so it's a big sector in our sectors. But we need to make sure that we start onshoring everything we possibly can. And again, I'm speaking for Ontario. We need to start producing I-beams here in Ontario. Toronto, the Greater Toronto Area has more cranes in the sky in a slow construction period than the top 10 cities in the U.S. And what those cranes do, they carry U.S. I-beams or rebar. Before this happened, I didn't realize we don't make rebar or I-beams here, but we're going to start making I-beams and steel. Aluminum cans that we all drink from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Labatt's, Molson's, private label craft brewers just in Ontario buy 150 million cans. What happens? They get 25% tariff on the way down, 25% tariff on the way back. Well, those days are done. We're bringing companies to manufacture and print the cans and form the cans, and that goes for tin cans as well. DeFasco in Hamilton makes tin, ships it all the way out to California. They make the tin cans and they ship them all the way back. Well, that has to come to an end too. We need to send them a strong message. We don't have to take a back seat to anyone in the world, and we sure the heck don't have to take a back seat to President Trump. Again, Prime Minister, I want to thank you for joining us for this FMN. It's refreshing to some of us that have been around this table for some time to have a Prime Minister that has our backs, that are out there. He's a great community
At least 4
builder.
series are planned here in the Senate today on 4 different nominations, including the nominees for Defense Department General Counsel, Commerce Undersecretary for International Trade, CDC Director, and the Veterans Department Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. CDC Director nominee Susan Menares is the key nomination we're watching today. That first vote series expected about 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Right now, we're waiting for a Senate
together and to touch on a number of major issues. Premier Hogan, you're the latest manifestation of this, and I think we all want to begin by acknowledging what Premier Moe, Premier Canoe, Premier Ford, Premier Legault, all of us have been going through with this terrible wildfire season. And our hearts go to those families that are affected literally across this country, all corners of this country by those wildfires. I will say that I'm pleased to see the extraordinary level of cooperation on all levels of government with respect to addressing the challenges that we're seeing. Leadership, obviously, by the provinces, but the federal government across seven different ministries is involved in protections, and the first responders and the volunteers in the community.
President.
Majority Whip.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Hearts of the families left behind who will always have a hole in their hearts for the rest of their lives. I want those families, especially Officer Islam's wife and kids and the families of Wesley LePatten from Blackstone and the other victims not yet named due to family notifications, to know this. You're not alone. All of New York grieves with you. We ache for you. We will always remember the sacrifice Officer Islam, a husband, son, and father, made for all of us. To the other victims, people just trying to make a living, do their jobs, our hearts are broken, and we too grieve with your families, and the city will carry their memories forward, and we will continue to pray for those still recovering and in critical condition. I want to thank the first responders who ran toward the gunfire, all the cops, EMTs, firefighters that got there fast and prevented even more bloodshed. They're heroes, every one of them. That's New York, courage under fire, grace in the face of horror. It's who we are. As we mourn this awful day in New York, we must remember we cannot keep meeting these moments with thoughts and prayers alone. We owe these families more than silence. We owe them action. For now we mourn, but we mourn as New Yorkers together. We'll carry on, yes. That's who we are. But we will never, never be the same. On cost, chaos, corruption. Nearly 8 months into Donald Trump's second term, the American people feel deep buyer's remorse. As you've seen so many times, Donald Trump's big promises turned out to be just duds. Turns out to be more lies. He seems to lie every day. He doesn't even care. He doesn't even shrug his shoulders. He doesn't show a bit of remorse on his face as he